A new Zelda trailer just dropped and I found 88 details that are worth taking a closer look at. But some of these are pretty spicy, so make sure that you have your Zelda pants on. Let's begin. The new flying monsters that we see are probably a reinterpretation of the classic Kargarok from the Wind Waker, since they are shown to carry enemies just like we see later in this trailer. This derelict camp is the same one we see from Breath of the Wild, which is located near the Korok Forest and is in a giant bog. Although the towers in this trailer might seem new, we've actually seen them in a past trailer. This is just our first good look at them. Are they going to replace the functionality of the old Sheikah towers? In the next clip, we see that this island has something dangling at the bottom of it, or maybe it's floating underneath it, kind of hard to tell. Floating around this island are blue wisps, which will come up again in just a second. At the top of the screen is another floating island, which is pretty hard to see. And then really far below this island is some sort of giant structure, which is probably just a low floating sky island. In the next scene, we once again see these blue floating tears. It might just be aesthetic, but are these the tears of the kingdom? It seems like the Lizalfos in this shot accidentally spilled some strawberry jam all over themselves, and they ain't looking too good. Age of Calamity actually featured Malice enemies much like this. However, this is our first time seeing a Lizalfos version infested with Malice. This poor Bokoblin seems to have a backpack of some sort and a stone weapon that is very similar to what we saw Link using in a previous trailer. Looking at the rock that's being hit by said tool, it clearly has some minerals all over it. However, what's really interesting are the circles on the giant stone itself. This is an aesthetic design Nintendo has been using a lot in their artwork for the game, and seems to resemble Zen gardens. So maybe these types of rocks have a specific purpose in the game. In the background, you'll also notice that there are some new mushroom trees and other strange flora. Just to name a few, we have a fern tree here, there's an ugly grove of trees right there, there's some kind of tree way in the back that looks like it's a mast, and then there's this glowing root thing in the center of the screen. Maybe it's a safety area, or maybe it's just meant to be a landmark that you can use for reference when traveling. Whatever it is, there's actually a second one way off in the distance that's barely visible. Some parts of the ground here have pasta sauce spilled all over them. And in the top left, you can see stalactites, which confirms that this area is definitely underground. And of course, who could overlook the altar in the center of the screen that looks a bit like a bookshelf? The voice actor that we hear at the beginning of the trailer for Ganondorf might very well be Matt Mercer from Critical Role. He lives in the LA region along with many other Breath of the Wild voice actors. He played the role of Ganondorf in a fan series about Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and he's known for doing video game voiceovers. So it's incredibly possible that this is Matt Mercer. We just don't know for sure until the sequel releases, due to non-disclosure agreements and other boring stuff. Regardless, if you'd like to hear what it sounds like when Matt Mercer does a deep voice, here's an example he has in his voiceover demo reel.
You were right. Every chieftain must make hard choices. Rise, rise, my servants. Sweep over Hyrule.
Anyways, as both clips side by side, I guess we'll find out soon enough whether it actually is Matt Mercer or not. On this bridge, we can see a Gleeok, or Gleeok? I don't know, the Zelda community is gonna have to brawl it out on the pronunciation. But we've seen these before in Zelda 1, where they acted as bosses at the ends of dungeons. On the hill to the left, there is a strange unknown object. Probably just a rock that fell from an island, but it could be something interesting. Who knows? And in the back, Death Mountain, still looking hot, although it's looking hot with Malice instead of lava this time. In this shot, we have the Hateno Tech Lab. However, there is no telescope or blue flame furnace there anymore, and the lights are out in the building. Shout out to AK Mountain Rider for pointing that out on Reddit. In Hateno Village, you could see that there is a teleportation pad. You can tell that this is a teleportation pad or a teleportation swirl because these swirls are found all over the freaking map, and they seem to be located at key locations, such as stables and Hateno Village. They also were featured earlier in the trailer, and we're gonna point them out whenever we see them from now on. Speaking of Hateno Village, they seem to have installed some new types of lamps? I'm not really sure what to make of those, but those things exist in the village now. In the distance, Meta Mountain is infested with a pool of malice. This mountain actually reappears later in the trailer, so see if you can keep your eye out for it. And then, even further back in the image, we can see a blue tower. Probably the same type of towers that we saw earlier, just this one has been activated. I have no idea where this shot was taken, but there's a barrel, so that's cool. If anybody knows where this location is, let me know in the comment section and I'll make sure to pin your comment. Here we see Hyrule Castle, and it has a gross amount of strawberry jam all over it. We know in this shot that the castle is floating because Zelda's tower is broken, so it's already began that process of rising out of the ground, but also in the bottom right, there would normally be a tower there, and it's just not there. So this is footage of the castle after it has risen out of the air. In this shot with the Blood Moon, it should be noted that Ganon is channeling his power through the moon, which is wild when you think about it because the moon is 238,900 miles from Earth, and presumably the same distance away in Hyrule. So Ganondorf's magic has a ridiculously long range. In this glimpse with a bunch of Malice meteorites crashing to Earth, we get another glimpse of a teleportation spiral. This one is located in the exact same spot as the Gen No Shrine from the original game, which is just more evidence that these are teleportation spirals. Something weird about this shot, however, is that it is taken right next to Mount Hylia, yet there's no snow like there is supposed to be in the base game. Very fishy. I'm like 90% sure that this shot is taken by Death Mountain, but knowing Nintendo, it could also just be a random shot of a piece of sky debris. This shot should actually be familiar. It also was featured in a previous trailer. In this Great Plateau shot, the most surprising thing is how much stuff is missing. The Sheikah Tower, poof, gone. The monster encampments that used to be there, poof, gone. The Skull encampment that used to be here, also gone. It appears that Nintendo is just having a removing spree in the sequel and is gonna completely rearrange where all the monster encampments are. In this shot with a few Bokoblins, we learned that they have even newer horns. In the previous trailers, their horns looked like the way that Moblin horns do in Breath of the Wild, but now they have a razor-looking design on it. In the shot after that, we get a glimpse of what is known as the Bokoblin boss. This low-ranking one has a sword on its head. Next to that, we see a Re-Dead. Then there's a new design for the blue Bokoblins right there. And then we see a standard blue Lizalfos, not injected with jam this time. It appears that Lizalfos have pointier and sharper horns than they did in the previous game. Oh, and hey, there's a really good look at the new red Moblin helmet. Here we have a scene of Link riding along, not particularly interesting except that right there are patterns on a fallen rock. Oh, but more interesting is that above Mount Hebra there is a cyclone formation, probably hiding some kind of sky island? I can't even begin to imagine what this is. Most YouTubers believe it's some sort of large Molduga, but another theory that I have is that this is a herd of enemies, because you could see that there's one little speck in the distance that is split apart from all the others, moving separate from the rest. In this Sheikah room scene, we see that all of these arms have claws on them, except one of them, which has a spool of wire on it. The Sheikah text on the ground, when translated, reads transport. So whatever this thing is, it's probably harmless. Now this shot is really cool because we get to see some of the interesting design changes with enemies up close. For one, blue Bokoblin bosses have axes on their heads instead of swords like the one we saw earlier. These bosses also hold a horn, which we have a better picture of on the Japanese Zelda Twitter account. What's cool is that this horn was originally designed to be used by Lynels in Breath of the Wild, but never ended up being used. So it looks like they found a new use for it. Shout out to Sealios Spring, one of my fellow Zelda YouTubers, for explaining that to me in a Zelda Discord chat. While we're looking at this art, let's also notice a few other things. For one, Bokoblin clubs are a lot thinner in this game than they were in the previous one. The Boko boss is holding a Boko bat, and these Bokoblins have yellow togas on, which is the first time we've ever seen them wear something like this. The Japanese Twitter account also shared some other cool pictures, but we're gonna save those for the end. In this cave shot, we see the return of the beloved Hinox, who has a green orb on his necklace. A theory on Reddit from JK999999 is that this is probably a key to some sort of dungeon. In this shot of Hyrule Field, Link is riding inside of one of the giant hieroglyphics we saw on the ground in previous trailers. Doesn't look like it does much at the moment, but maybe it just needs to be unlocked, or maybe it's a part of a bigger puzzle. Well, I told Nintendo not to do it, but they added flying Bokoblins. This is a bad idea, never should have done it, but I also should have seen it coming. Okay, what else do we have here? Typhlo Ruins, that is free from darkness, so that is cool. And do you see that? Yes, you do. It's another teleportation spiral. Now this is another one of those really fun scenes because we get to see how the monsters have changed. For instance, the black moblin has a bull-shaped set of horns on his head. And at the beginning of this clip, he's pulling his head out of the ground, meaning he probably did some kind of attack that got his head stuck there. And also, we get to see, look at it, those clubs are thinner. But more interesting is the fact that the skull fortress behind the moblins has wooden platforms on it now. That's very resourceful thinking from the monsters. I actually don't have very much to say about this guy. I mean, it looks like an iron golem that got confused about which game it's supposed to be in. But something kind of cool about its design is that it seems like it is constructed from many separate blocks. So when you approach the boss, my guess is that it starts as a pile of blocks and then it forms together. But no. I think that the really interesting thing in this shot is Link himself. You'll notice that we get a good look at his sword here, and actually here's an image which is better. It shows that it is just a normal rusty sword, it's not the Master's sword. And on top of that, on his little satchel there, we have some containers of some sort. 2 of them are empty, and 2 of them are filled. Maybe it's some sort of magic meter? Taking a second to appreciate this shot, over to the right we have Death Mountain chugging away some malice. This is pretty close to it, so I'm surprised that Link is safe. And then we have the glorious Cube Island. I'm actually really excited to see what's inside that. I have no idea, but if it's a cube, it must have something good in it. According to user Amber Relic Collector from Reddit, this shot happens from a ledge near Nabby Lake. And once again, it appears that the monsters have formed a new fortification in the area. These are clearly some kind of homing arrow, but what many people might miss is that if you slow down the clip, you'll see that it is sucking in some sort of green Zonai energy before it's fired. And to the right there, another monster encampment. Holy cow, we have seen a lot of these. Oh, this is such a cool shot. In this mining scene, we get confirmation that these monsters are in fact deliberately looking for something through mining, and successfully dug up some funny looking rock in the back. As for Link's surfing ability, I don't know what is more surprising, the fact that he can surf on rails, or the fact that he's using a wooden shield to do it. Hopefully that means that shield surfing durability is upgraded in the sequel. And there are 2 hover wheels over there for constructing air vehicles. That's a surprise tool that'll help us later. Here we see that Link is using his hand powers to control the rotation of a much larger island. And the reason he's doing it is because he just wants to get that tiny hanging object in the bottom right. As cool as the Cannon Club thing is, don't overlook the glowing machinery hanging from the ceiling in the back. It looks very similar to the machinery that is in the Shrine of Resurrection. I don't know, and frankly, I don't care who's in this shot, but what's really cool is that they have a comma on their outfit, which mimics the same design we have seen in stone murals from past trailers. And here we see my favorite bog in the entire game, the one that's on the Great Plateau, but it seems to have been littered by sky debris. In the top left, you'll notice a new design for a treasure chest. Kind of looks like the ones I've seen in another game called Sea of Thieves. Oh gosh, I have to explain this somehow. Here's a cool one. That in the back, that's a power source. And somehow you're able to put this stuff together. Yeah, that's the whole explanation, that's it. Activate the meme! Also, those are the ruins of Lon Lon Ranch in the background. Nice. What the? Okay, no, I don't know how to explain this thing either. It's a hot air balloon. I don't know how it's all put together, but there's some kind of weird goop that's sticking the things to the other things. Oh, okay, here we go. This is a cool one. These propellers are the same ones we saw at the monster encampment earlier. See, I told you those things would come in handy. Also, there's a lot of long things there. I would like to say that they're waterfalls, but they look a little bit lumpy to be those. So they might be some energy that's like flowing up to keep the islands hovering. I'm spitting answers out here, I don't know what that is. Hey, in this field shot, we get to see some debris as they're falling, as well as a newly constructed NPC tent. And as pointed out to me by one of my favorite Zelda YouTube creators, Chcken Burrito, there is a Korok flower that spawns while the camera is moving away, right there, bottom left. Ugh, he's got such a good eye for these things. And so we come to the final scene before we look at the Twitter pictures. In this scene, we see that Ganon's corpse is sending malice in Link's direction, and we see that Link already has some malice that is corrupting his Master Sword. However, Link jumps out of the way to try and save Zelda at just the last minute, and we don't know what happens. However, I don't think the malice was actually aiming at Link. I think it was aiming at Zelda. We also get a cool shot of Link's charred arm. It doesn't really go chop chop, it's not like it gets cut off at any point, but it's pretty messed up, so I'm surprised he's even able to move that thing. Now for the Twitter pictures. On the Japanese Zelda Twitter, they shared a few really interesting images alongside this trailer, so we're gonna include it in this video. The first one is of Zelda on her very own custom Sheikah slate. So hopefully that means she is a playable character. Otherwise, why would you give her a Sheikah slate? And then we have Ancient Link here, whose shoulder isn't as charred as the image we saw earlier. He just has some runic designs on his shoulder. So maybe he heals his arm? I don't know, we'll see. And then we have some confirmation that amiibos will have functionality in this game by giving you special materials, weapons, and custom paraglider designs. Alongside that, they also announced that there will be a new shop added into the game, where you can swap out your fabric designs on your paraglider. Whew, okay, that was a lot. I had to pull an all-nighter to make this, so if you are watching this late at night, then please get some sleep. Don't be like me, I'm a bad example. Sleep is important. Hopefully, this list was interesting to you, and until I see you next time, have fun storming the castle.